Sports NFL writer Ryan Wilson and 10-year NFL pro Lee J. Douzable for this shocking, well, maybe not shocking because Geno Smith reunited with Pete Carroll. But, Ryan, I'll start with you. What's your reaction to Geno going from Seattle, now landing back with his head coach Pete Carroll with the Raiders?
Chris, Lee J, I was minding my business on a nice little Friday evening, and next thing I know, Eugene Cyril Smith III is on the move. I'm sort of shocked. I knew there was some uncertainty in terms of his future in Seattle. I actually love the fit in Las Vegas. They need a quarterback. It's only cost them a third-round pick. They don't necessarily have to draft one now with that 6th overall pick. And you talked about all the successes that Geno has. He also had those 15 interceptions, but in every one of those clips we saw, he was getting hit in the mouth. Like the offensive line wasn't quite where it needed to be in terms of consistency in Seattle. I think in Vegas, that offensive line is a little bit underrated, and I think we'll have more opportunities with Chip Kelly as a new OC to perhaps get them where they want to go in one of the toughest divisions. And I think the other thing is whether they go quarterback or not at 6, you can't go into the season with Aiden O'Connell. We saw that last year with him and Gardner Minshew, and it worked out exactly like we thought it did. I love this for the Raiders. I understand it on some level for the Seahawks. We have to see what they're going to do in terms of plan B at the quarterback position, because currently it's Sam Howell and Jaron Hall. I don't think that's the long-term answer. But in terms of the Raiders, and Raiders fans in particular, they should be pretty excited tonight.
Lee J, are you in agreement?
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, Chris, head scratching, right? Seattle better have a plan in place, because it's been really interesting since Mike McDonald took over as head coach. There's been some head scratching moves. Let's just go back to last year, right? They signed Jerome Baker and Terrell Dotson via free agency. Well, they trade Jerome Baker for Ernest Jones halfway through the season, and then they release Terrell Dotson after giving him a nice little bag. DK Metcalf is in the final year of his contract. He's asking for a trade. Geno Smith was in the same scenario, so a lot of people thought that they would do maybe a short extension, maybe a 2 to 3 year extension, where they keep him around a little bit. He could be the bridge guy for the guy that is ultimately going to be the future quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And you see it right there. He's been pinpoint accurate when you talk about all-time Seattle great quarterbacks. First in completion percentage, first in completions, first in attempts, first in passing yards for a single season. People forget, just 2 years ago, Ryan and Chris, Geno Smith was named the starter for the Pro Bowl in the NFC side, because that's how well he played. And I love what Ryan said. He did have a lot of interceptions, but he was getting hit in the mouth every 2 seconds. Like, I don't think people understand or appreciated Geno Smith enough with the Seattle Seahawks, because he mitigated a lot of those offensive line issues the last 2 years that he kind of covered up because of his skill set. And I go back to what I said 2 years ago. There's not a quarterback that makes more perfect throws than Geno Smith. So this is head-scratching from the Seattle Seahawks point of view. But I'm like, Ryan, I love it for the Las Vegas Raiders, because there's already synergy there, right? Pete Carroll was the quarterback that believed in Geno Smith once Russell Wilson got traded away. He was like, this is our guy. We're going to give him a chance to start. And it paid dividends for them. They went to the playoffs that year. So I love this for the Raiders. Head-scratching for the Seattle Seahawks. They better have a plan in place.
Ryan, with that point being said that Lee J brought up, what plan do you think is in place here? Because now you get rid of one of the most accurate QBs, right? Somebody that, as Lee J talked about, mitigated a lot of those issues with the offensive line. What do they need to do to bring this franchise, back to, I guess, a perennial playoff contender and winning their division?
Yeah, I think John Schneider, the GM, more than any other GM in the NFL, zigs when everyone else zags. And we see that in terms of guys they draft, in terms of guys they sign, as Lee J talked about. And that's sort of played itself out year after year. You can sometimes predict which player a team might target in the draft. You will never, ever, ever get what the Seattle Seahawks are going to do. A lot of times they hit Devin Witherspoon, Byron Murphy, and sometimes it leaves you scratching your head. And I think this is one of those things, as Lee J's talking about, they have to have a plan in place. So they currently pick 18th. My latest mock draft, because I thought Geno was going to be there, I had him taking a defensive tackle, Kenneth Grant, who I think would be a fantastic pick for them. Now, you're not going to get a quarterback at 18. Are you going to be in the Sam Darnold business? And if you are going to be in the Sam Darnold business, that means you're going to pay him $45 million plus per year should he become available, and you outbid other teams. And, oh, by the way, is he an upgrade over Geno Smith? So these are all the conversations that you're going to have. Now Sam's 27, Geno's 34, so there's a 7-year age gap there, and I get that. But as Lee J was just pointing out, show me someone who's more accurate down the field than Geno Smith, especially under pressure. And I tell you how I know this is a good deal for the Raiders. I'm a Steelers fan, and I was like, wait a second, all it cost was a third-round pick, and Pittsburgh wasn't on the phone, because that would have been a grand slam pick for them as well. So Sam Darnold feels like the obvious choice, Lee J, but is he an upgrade at more money than what you have in Geno Smith?
Yeah, and that's why it's head scratching to me, because I don't understand why they wouldn't just give Geno a 2-year extension. I think that the thing that makes it even more head scratching, guys, is that Mike Macdonald came out talking about how he loved Geno, and Geno's the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, and then they trade him again. This probably goes beyond Mike Macdonald. This is probably a GM decision, because DK Metcalf is in the same scenario, being in the last year of his deal. He wants an extension. Most players want that comfortability. They don't want to have to go into that last year playing on the last year of their deal. They want that financial security. So I thought it made a lot of sense for the Seattle Seahawks to do like a 2-year extension, maybe 3 years. They can get out of it after the 3rd year, lower his cap number down. It made too much sense not to do it. Now you're talking about not only not having your starting quarterback, and you know, Ryan already alluded to it. You have Jaron Hall and Sam Howell as your 2 quarterbacks right now, but then probably losing your number 1 or 2 receiver in DK Metcalf. So it's almost like last year you thought would have been the year they were going to start over with a new head coach, but now that the coach going into his 2nd year is going to have to revamp things, not only with a new quarterback, but probably a star receiver on the outside as well. So this is just head scratching again. Love it for the Raiders. Don't understand it for the Seattle Seahawks. And to Ryan's point, picking at 18, you're not going to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks. Are you going to potentially draft Jackson Dart at 18? That could be a possibility as well. But this is still head-scratching for the Seattle Seahawks.
So head-scratching for the Seahawks. You love the move for the Raiders, Ryan. When you look at how their roster is constructed right now, what other moves do you think they should make to make sure they get this Raiders team back into the playoffs?
Yeah, like I said, Chris, I think the offensive line is in pretty good shape. And you're picking there at 6, and Lee J and I were just talking about this guy a couple hours ago, just shooting the bull. If Tedrow McMillan is there at 6, the wide receiver at Arizona, guess what I'm doing? I'm drafting Tedrow McMillan, because then you have him, you got Brock Bowers, you got the offensive line that's a little better, you got a defense to just re-up Max Crosby. You're in a good place in a division where you have to score points. Now, you can go on the defensive side of the ball. They need help in the secondary. I don't know if you're going to take a cornerback that high necessarily, but maybe you trade down a few spots, accumulate a few more picks. Another guy that Lee J and I love, we talked to him at the combine, you get Jahdae Barron around 12 or 13th. If you trade down 5 or 6 spots, the cornerback / slot out of Texas, grand slam. So there are a lot of things you can now do that you have your quarterback situation taken care of for the next 2 years or so, whether that's drafting a developmental quarterback, and by that I mean Shedeur Sanders, who doesn't have to play right away, or whether you're getting him a weapon in Geno Smith and Tedrow McMillan to go along with what Brock Bowers did last year. And I think Brock Bowers, by the way he played in year 1, is probably already close to being a Hall of Famer. He was so good.
Yeah, Lee J, what's your top
interesting.
priority?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely getting Geno Smith a weapon on the outside to go with Brock Bowers. And let's not forget, this might not be the only business that Seattle and the Raiders do, because DK Metcalf was there when Pete Carroll drafted him as well. So could they call the Raiders and say, hey, we just traded for a quarterback. What about that?